Everybody, Will here with this week's interview chair. So sit back and relax and listen to Mr. Phillip Booth. Hi, everybody. Will here with this week's interview, and guess who it is? It's my dear friend, Phillip Booth. I've known Phil forever. How you doing, Phil?
Doing well. Well, how you doing this morning?
Good to see you, man. Look how relaxed you look. Retirement done you well. Look at that.
Yeah, it's been a lot of calm, a lot of difference.
That's excellent. That's excellent. You know, calm is good. It's good for us. You know. And
yeah, after the lives that we've led over the years, calming down's good for you.
Oh, exactly. You know, and then you see the things going on around you. Think, oh my God, how did I do that? I remember going to a show and setting up with Adam. I just had my Irish setter with me, and they put like 30 dogs in the X pens. Right. I felt like throwing up.
Exactly. At the time when you're doing it, it's just fun and normal, and then take a step back and whoo.
I'm telling you, anxiety kicks in.
Right.
So we're gonna find out all about Mr. Booth today. Okay. Tell me, how did you get started in this wonderful world of dogs, Phillip?
Well, that's a good story.
I like good stories.
I guess it was 1984. So that must be 7 years ago. I was watching Westminster on television.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in the metropolitan Detroit area. At that time, recently married. And we were watching Westminster Kennel Club on TV. And which obviously would have been Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
And saw the sporting group and saw a Gordon setter in the group. And I thought, wow, that's really a pretty dog. And we had talked about getting a dog. We were about to have a family. First son was about to be born. And so we talked about a dog. And long story short, Detroit News came out the next Sunday. I looked in the classifieds, Gordon setters. Oh, cool. So drove out about an hour away from me to this lady's house. Her name was Linda Houston. I'll never forget her name. And she had a litter of puppies. At the time, she was breeding with, I'm trying to think, D. Franzak was her name at the time. I think it's Veda now, maybe. She had Show Gene Kennels.
Oh, okay. I remember that name.
Once I got into it a little bit, Pam Shar showed dogs for her setters. You would know Pam, obviously.
Oh, for sure.
So she wasn't very super well known or had a lot of history, but the people affiliated with her or her mentors did. Anyway, I go out there, going to buy a companion dog. At the time, it was still called a pet, not a companion, And I was looking, and she had the dogs, and I knew nothing about purebred dogs, nothing about dog shows. Never been to a dog show in my life, never saw one, nothing. So she had these dogs in 2 separate X pens. 3 or 4 over here and 4 or 5 over here. And she said, these dogs are the dogs that are available for pets or whatever. And I said, okay. And she said, you can pick. She said, I'm just now starting to place these dogs with people. So you can pick whichever one you want. And I wanted a female, I thought, and I did. But then this other group of dogs over here in this other pen, these other 3 or 4, they were active and kind of, not that these weren't, but I just kept getting drawn back to this other pen. And I said, well, what if I want this one? What if I wanted this? Oh, that's one of my show dogs. I said, oh, and I'm thinking, show dog, what's that? I seriously didn't know, right? So I'm thinking, oh, okay. So, and as the time went on and we talked, and she's a lovely lady, and I just kept going back to that bitch over in this other pen that she called show dog. And I finally said, and in the back of my mind, and this is kind of, I don't know, but it's true. This is a true story. I'm kind of thinking, okay, lady, I just drove an hour from Pleasant Ridge, Michigan to get out here to Highland and buy a dog. I'm going to buy my dog and I'm going to go. And what are you going to do? Chase me down for this dog, right? I mean, I had no knowledge of finishing, nothing, right? So I'm thinking in my head, well, I'm just going to buy this dog and take it home like you would from, the grocery store or something when you buy it, right? So anyway, a long story, tried to make shorter. She agreed to sell me this show dog on a co-ownership with her. And I knew nothing about that at the time. And she was a lovely lady, lovely, lovely lady. So fast forward, had the puppy. She's calling, checking on the puppy. I'm asking questions. And I did some research. There was no internet then and no nothing like that. But I started asking some questions about people that she had referred me to. And she said, well, we're going to have to hire a handler to finish the dog. I said, oh, okay, whatever. At the time, I was still working for my dad in the automotive industry in race cars and stuff. And I said, okay, cool. We'll hire whatever it needs. And she said, but if you want to, when she gets old enough, you can take her to some handling classes. And I'm thinking, handling classes? What's that? So anyway, got a relationship with the lady, drove out there. She taught me a little bit about trimming and maintenance, to keep them straight. And then when the bitch got old enough, I went to my first handling class. And my first handling class was at, what did they call that place? I don't remember the name of the place. Sportsman's maybe or something like that. But the best part of the story is the lady running the class was Debbie Zink or Marie Zink, the Dalmatian lady who 25 years later, I'm putting best in shows on a Dalmatian that she bred.
Oh, she did a good job teaching you how to handle.
Exactly.
Now she's reaping the benefits.
Right. Over the year. Yeah, either that or that damn guy that I trained, now. No, but that's how all that started. It was just
cool.
By accident, took it home, watching on TV, and, went from there. Like I said, I never had any affiliation with shows, juniors, or any working or anything. But my father, through drag racing, had taught me that, and I didn't end up following this rule very closely as my career continued. But he taught me that you learn more with your mouth shut and your eyes open than you do. So when I started going to shows and stuff, I just sat and watched. I mean, I think it was different back then, Will. We didn't just go to the show and leave after
no, you're right.
Dessert Winner's Bitch or something. You sat around and watched it. And I find myself very, very, just like you, we're similar age, of the people that we got to, in my case, I didn't get to work for, but I got to watch at their craft. And I think those were in the late 80s, 90s. I think those were some of the best. I mean, that doesn't diminish, we don't diminish what we have now, but that was, I mean, when I went to shows in the Michigan area, I got to sit and watch Tom Glassford, George Ward, Kenny Murray in the Midwest, Dick Cooper. I mean, all these people that we both know were at the top of their craft.
Rock stars in our eyes.
Yeah. So that's how I got started. And then I developed, I like competition. Anybody that knows me really well. And my wife will even say that if I could put engines on baby strollers, I'd be racing my grandchildren around. Like the competition a little bit. So anyway, I enjoyed the competition of dog shows. It was a big learning curve for me. Growing up in a sport like NHRA drag racing, that is a very well-defined win or lose. Okay. If you follow the rules, if you work hard, if your car makes the most power and things don't break, you get to the finish line for it, you win.
Right.
It wasn't
subjective.
Right. It wasn't like, and when I talk about things, I'm not always the most finessed in words. I'm more of a very black and white person. At least I think I am. And, you have to get into your head that it is just an opinion. You're asking for someone's opinion, and you're going to get it. You may not agree with it or like it, but it is just there are no absolutes. No,
if there were, we could just punch in a computer and see who wins. So
right, your virtual show, right. So that was a lesson that I had to learn. Because it's like I said, it's like back in the day, gymnastics, the Russian judge is never going to give the American a 10, and that doesn't really make them wrong. It's just that's just how it is.
That's why I often refer to this as canine figure skating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And the only thing we can't do on ice is, fight like your beloved hockey players.
Yeah. Most of the time, dog shows are a non-contact sport. Yeah,
right,
most of the time.
Most of the time, we've all had a moment or two, right?
All right. So you got your Gordon Center now. And who did you hire? Or did you just go right at it yourself after your handling classes?
I ended up going right after it myself. The bitch was pretty. I one of my first dog shows was. It's things, how things go. They go full circle. One of my first ever dog shows, indoor dog shows, was Detroit Kennel Club.
Oh, wow. Good way to step in.
I'm a member. Right. Now I'm a member, and it was a major back when Detroit had the Tournament of Champions with I'm still. Oh. It was, you guys Canadians would come, big day. And
a 5,000 dog show sometimes.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And that was one of my first indoor events. I had my bitch entered in the American bred class, and I won a major from the American bred. So I was hooked. What's the big deal? What's so tough about this, right?
Yeah, it's nothing to this.
Exactly. Where's the challenge, right? No, but that hooked me pretty good there, and I went from there to. Showing some dogs for other people. I still working for my dad, so I couldn't be gone a lot. And I got some experience being the fact I had to go to work and work with my dad. I would usually set up once I got to know them over the years, I'd set up with people in the local area, because I had my one little dog. And I befriended Tom and Andrea Glassford pretty good and would set up with them quite a bit and learned a lot,
Oh, I'm sure.
Learned a lot. And, obviously, Tommy and George were very good friends, so got thrown into that. And George was George, with his record and his love of dogs. But it was looking back on it now, of all the people that I could have been affiliated with in my area, I'm quite honored to have had experience with them, because they like them, don't like them, personalities. Those two men love dogs.
Yeah, let's face it, that was the heyday of those areas dog shows, and having George and Tommy and Dick show up and
Kenny
Kenny,
and then it got
Brian,
a little farther. Brian Still's in the mix there too. It was and I'm sure we're missing somebody, but it was very fortunate. It's like anybody. If you grew up on the East Coast, you had Peter and that crew and Bobby Fischer, and you had the Roy Holloway. So you no matter where you were, there was always a core group of people.
Right.
They didn't travel back then like
they do today. It was more localized, and you had your area. I remember stories about George. George didn't care if you came into his area to make a living with 10 dogs. You showed up with one dog, he'd get upset, because you're not just going to come in and try to steal Michigan's points.
Exactly. Especially the terrier group, right?
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that you go back and think about things that happen, and it jumps periods of years. But I think that you end up sounding like your father or your grandfather. Oh, those days, I remember.
Not like they used to be.
A lot of it's true, really.
Back in my day, no.
Right. The older I get, the smarter my father is. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm not sure how to take that, but
I know. Until we start wearing the socks and stuff.
Exactly. So we started with the Gordon Setters. Bred a litter on that bitch and finished a couple. And then, like I said, I ended up, some local people had dogs that I started showing and helping out with, and campaigned a Gordon setter named Mike. Was the first dog I did some winning with. You know what? It's bad because sometimes my years don't. What came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing? You know?
Yeah.
I believe. I mean, I had traveled and befriended some people and helped show some dogs and won a couple of groups and with other people's dogs. But my first best in show was an Irish setter in Michigan, and it was what was that? No,
Shay? What was it?
Shady View. Shay.
Yeah.
yeah. It was 1995. That was my first best in show at
I remember that dog. And Megan won the dog.
Megan Veen, yes.
Yeah.
Shady View lady. And I'll never the dogs, it's so funny because, and I'm sure you're the same way. Sometimes you look at these dogs from 25 and 30 years ago and you kind of think, that's not really what I like right now. Or at the time,
everything evolves, right? You look at some past winners and you think, oh my, but everything evolves. It's a generational thing. So
right. And I think our appreciation for certain things or our priorities may change, and what's important in a breed.
For sure.
And like I look at the best in show picture of that dog and I'm thinking, oh, okay. A lovely dog, lots of, but and even dogs, even other dogs that through my career that I did some winning with, probably the Mr. Debonair dog, Kevin,
lovely dog.
Several best in shows and was very competitive at the specialty level. Also, people would have a critique of him, and at the time, I don't know if I didn't see it, didn't want to believe it, but my point in this is all these dogs, when they end up retiring or stop being shown, and you really open your mind and you take a step back and you look, you think, well, they might have been right. I mean, if it's somebody that has some experience or, that one's eyes, that isn't the most attractive thing on the dog.
For sure. Like that dog I showed, Impresario, was like 87. The dog over my shoulder, the Irish there, the big portrait.
Yeah.
He was a lovely dog.
Right.
I wish I could have had him now when I knew more about the breed than I did then. I was a kid,
I think about that all the time. Even when even in the midst of the Wirehair Pointer dog's career, back in 2012, I was thinking at one point, some time at some show, I'm thinking, boy, I wish I had my Irish setter bitch now. Not demeaning the Wirehair Pointer dog, but knowing what I know now, and having met the people through the sport that have passions for dogs and want to support dogs. Had I had a little bit then with that one, because she did well on her own, very well.
Everything changes. We've evolved in our talent, our trimming, everything. So it's amazing what these dogs did for us with us not knowing much.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Muddled through, and that tells me, those were some pretty good dogs. Not that there's not good dogs now. But I try. I'm rambling on here, but
that's good. I like rambling, man.
I approach this stuff now that I've retired and I'm contemplating applying to do some judging and stuff. I don't want to do a bad job. I don't want to do. Nobody does, but I don't want to. I find that there's a lot of negative, not just fault judging, but even the perception of what's going on sometimes between judges and exhibitors and that.
For sure.
I think that people need to be a little more open-minded when you talk about dogs and approach it from a much more positive, attribute-based opinion than what's wrong with the dog.
Right. That's so easy to pick out what's wrong with dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's face it, familiarity breeds contempt. So when you're in the same area with a dog that just keeps biting your ass or beating your ass, you you start picking on what's wrong with that dog. If that dog
Right.
just showed up out of the blue, you'd probably go, "Oh, that's a nice dog."
Right. Or if it was in your truck, right?
Oh, yeah, well, the truck. It's a magic truck. So as soon as it gets in the truck, it
Exactly.
doesn't matter.
If you start, right. Those rotten professional handlers, as soon as we start sending an invoice for it, it's the best one ever.
That's right. They come up the back ramp, they leave the side door, they're just the best dogs in the block.
Right. Oh, we joke about that, but it is pretty funny. It is pretty
well,
funny.
you have to get behind your charges. So
Yeah, I mean, if someone's paying me to campaign a dog, okay, I can do my very best for that dog without, if I'm not, why bother? Why if you're not going to give them
exactly, if you're gonna take their money and show their dog, you have to have some belief in that dog.
Right. And as careers change and things change, we all get to the point where we don't always take every dog we're offered.
Right.
And I think that's a very legitimate thing. A lot of people, I'm sure you've had clients say, "Well, what do you mean you don't?" We all have.
You have to do
and
it.
And that's not necessarily to you're too good or you're better than. It's just you're giving your professional opinion. I find it no different than other professions, whether it's lawyers, doctors, anything. You're hiring me for my expertise or my abilities, and if you don't agree with that, then get another opinion. And we as handlers can't be mad if the relationships don't click or the dog doesn't click or whatever. But
sometimes the fit isn't right. It just, it's like, I hate in that sport analogy, but it's like a player needs to leave Detroit and come to Toronto for a new fresh breath, to start again.
Right. Sometimes change of scenery makes all the difference in the world.
And areas too. Let's face it. There's some areas where the strength is a little different in certain groups, and sometimes that dog needs to be in that area.
Right. And that doesn't really change the quality of the dog. It's just what's going on around it. But back to what I would like to touch.
We kind of ventured off, which is fine. I like it.
Yeah, back to growing up in the sport and people and ways. I really, really believe that you can learn a lot just by watching.
Oh.
And just by sticking around and
there's no question. Like I would run from my parents. They couldn't find me, so I could stay and watch things.
Exactly.
They'd be looking all over because they want to go because they lost Irish setters, but I wanted to watch the sporting group, or I wanted to watch Bouviers, or I wanted to watch.
Yeah. Now that the sport has, I jokingly talk about my parents, and I went to college and couple of hours short of a mechanical engineering degree. And I'm sure when I first started showing dogs, I'm sure they were so very proud, I'll never forget. I'll never get, I just purchased the boarding kennel there in Michigan, the Maywill from Judy Russell.
Yeah, I remember.
Started doing the commercial kennel thing. And I went to shows, and I was visiting with my dad for some holiday or something. And he said, "Maybe you are making a living." I got a car. I don't know. Something had happened, and I had a little bit of money. And he said, "Maybe that thing is a real job. Maybe you really are doing because it was just nobody. It's just another thing that unless you're involved, like the day I drove to Highland, Michigan to pick up that puppy, I had no idea about AKC purebred dogs or all breed dog shows. Zero.
Yeah.
And then, 37 years now, but in the period, my career really started heavy full time, like in 2098-ish, maybe, I guess, 99 with a kennel. Then I moved, got rid of the boarding kennel and moved out in a rural area in Michigan and started a career there with my ex-wife. And we had a great run. It was great career. Could not have done any of that stuff. One person couldn't do that, manage careers like that and stuff. But it was, you meet so many, and I'm bouncing from topic to topic. I forget where I'm going, but the people that showing dogs, from driving to that lady's house to sitting here today, 37 years later, having made a living, put my kids through college, had a career, successful career. Who would have thought?
Oh, exactly.
And our sport of dogs, you can meet people every aspect of life, as you well know, and I was very fortunate to have some great people in my life then and now, still to this day, judges, clients, and everybody does something different,
Yeah.
So,
Oh, it's an amazing world that we've been invited to,
Right.
So you've won Best in Show with the Irish Setter dog. That was your first Best in Show. Megan's Irish Setter dog, Shay. What was your next big dog after Shay? What dog do you think really decided that I'm going to stay doing this? I like doing this.
Well, there was a Gordon Setter dog owned by a lady named Kathy Rezepka of Scimitar Kennels. Her and her husband at the time had that prefix. And she had a dog that she liked showing herself, but ended up being a pretty good sized dog and a little much for her. And I showed that dog, and that dog won quite a bit. Never won a Best in Show on it. I believe he was number one Gordon Setter 1 year or so. I'd have to go back and look. But that was the first dog that I really had a client, had a goal. I thought I turned that off. Had a goal, and wanted to achieve it, for the client. So that was the first. He won quite a bit. But
what was his name?
Mike. Scimitar's Ultimate Danger.
For some reason, I think I remember that dog.
He did a little bit of winning in the area. He upset the apple cart a couple of times. I think probably one of the biggest things was we were at the Monroe Kennel Club. So I think it was Monroe then. It might have been Ann Arbor. One of those shows at the fairgrounds, and Michael Faulkner had that
QB gal.
Right.
Golden bitch, yeah.
Beautiful golden retriever, winning all the time. And Virginia Hampton, if you remember that name, was doing the sporting group. And I won that group. And it might have been one of the first groups I won in the dub, but in the lineup and in the competition, it was to a point where I didn't know what I know now, but I was starting to learn, where the puzzle pieces fit and all that stuff. And I'll never forget when that group, and Michael, where did that come from? It was funny. But like you, we've all won some where it was a shock, and we've lost some where it was a shock. But
yeah. They tend to balance out.
Yeah. Then from that dog, the first dog that I had that obviously all my stuff sporting dog in the beginning. The first dog that I had that really won Best in Shows and was a top 10 sporting dog and everything, a consistent career, was the Irish Setter Mr. Debonair, Kevin. Yeah. That dog actually came to me kind of by accident. Kenny Murray was showing the Bit of Gold Kirby Titan Treasure dog.
Yeah,
it was kind of at the later stages of that dog's career, and Leslie Russell, the Avon farm lady from Oregon. I'm not sure how Kenny got hooked up with that or not, but Kenny had the Irish Setter dog, and I showed he was in Michigan. I covered a dog for him in a group because he was winning with Kirby still, and it was a nice dog. Fast forward, they decided to keep Kirby out, and somewhere I was where I showed that dog, Rick Shashutian saw the dog and said, "Kid, that's a real, kid, hey kid, that's a beautiful Irish Setter." I said, "Well, it's not mine, it's Kenny." He said, "Well, you need to get that one. That dog looks really good for you." And I said, "Oh, okay." I'm still never really had my clients were all local based, just showing local. I never really branched out to have a client that I was going to do some traveling for and everything. And the dog ended up going back to Leslie because Kenny ended up keeping the Kirby dog out another year. And I got a phone call, I don't know, one day sitting at the kennel, and it was from Leslie Russell about, was I interested in showing this dog? And I said, I've never done that. I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, I got a phone call from Rick saying that I should say, if I'm going to do what I want to know what I'm going to do with the dog. And if I did anything with the dog, I should send it to this young kid in Michigan. It's just getting started. And long story short, I ended up getting the dog, did a little bit with him. At the time, a guy named Jeff Wallace was owning dog springers with Andrea Glassford and showing some dogs with Andrea and Tom. And he loved the breed. His partner loved Irish setters, loved the breed. So it all just kind of fell into place. He ended up owning the dog, and Kevin did very well. I think he ended up with, I don't know, 18 or 20 best in shows. And
He was a lovely dog, Kevin.
he was a fun dog. But there's two things that in my career, the bucket list that I've never done. And when I tell people, it's like, never won an Irish Setter National. All the Irish Setters I've ever had, never won an Irish Setter National, and never won a Gordon Setter National.
Yeah. I had neither until later. I'd almost on the verge of retirement before I did those things. So
There you go.
it was the same thing. It was like, oh my God, I kept going award of merit. Best I'd win the host specialty and lose the national.
Exactly.
But
Exactly. So anyway, that was
it's not over yet, Philip.
right.
Irish Setter.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm doing these legatos and Labradors. Maybe my days come. But no, it was a lot. Those dogs were good dogs and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That Irish Setter dog progressed into the first wire pointer dog I showed and the dog's name was Larkspur's Darkwing Tie-Dye.
That dog too.
Yeah, she was funny, and Jeff was owning. Yeah. This is a good story. Jeff was owning Kevin, Irish Setter. We're in Canfield, and you obviously know Canfield hot, and we're all parked, and Tom and everybody, and Jeff comes in to watch the Springer and the Irish Setter, and I told him a few weeks before. I said, hey, I got this dog. He said, what do you want to do next year? And I said, well, I got this dog from this breeder lady here in Michigan, wire hair pointer bitch. She was winner's bitch at the National, and Mrs. Clark put her up and blah, blah, blah. So it's a good dog. Okay. Well, he said, can you get the bitch and have her in Canfield? We'll take a look at it. And I said, yeah, sure. And I knew nothing other than what I'm talking about now. So I get the bitch from Gina Ty, and she's a little purebred wire hair pointer. Like if somebody slammed a door in Los Angeles, she'd hit the deck in Columbus. You know what I mean? So
she was very attuned.
She's a bit of a challenge. So we're in the dog show, and Jeff shows up on Friday or something, and we finish the dog show, and I said, let's see this wire pointer. And I said, okay. So I go into my truck and I get her, and she's acting a goof, just a goof. So I come down the stairs of my truck and she's, looking around and get a little bit crazy. And she gets to the bottom of the stairs and just like sprawls out, like this. And he just looks at me. He just looks at me and he says, you want me to spend money on that? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, put her away. That was it. And she ended up, she had just never been anywhere and just just needed some time and some comfort and, get going from her home where she was born and raised and, showed very little. Gina finished her at specialties only. So she probably hadn't been to 10 dog shows in her life.
Right.
So, but it was funny. He said, you want me to own that? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, put her away. Let's go to dinner. And she ended up doing well.
She did do well. She was a good bitch, no questions.
Yeah, doing fun. But so that was that aspect. And then what happened next? Oh, probably branched out and I showed some dogs for some really great people. A lady named Mary Ann Reeder had Weimaraners in Ohio. Mm-hmm. Her handlers were Jim Berger Sr. and then Jimmy Berger after Jim retired. So she approached me. I started showing some Weimaraners for her. I had been in a relationship and a partnership with Lisa Arnett, and we had she had a lot of Cocker Spaniels from Nancy Gallant and some of those people. So at the time of some of these other dogs, we were involved in other breeds as well. So it went full circle, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Just experience, learning as you go,
And showing those dogs in Michigan area through those times. Again, we talked about, George and Tommy and whatnot. I bet you had some pretty good times with those guys.
Yeah, some great times. Played a lot of golf, and had some dinners, some of which we can discuss, and some we probably can't. But one dinner does.
That's why I brought it up, Phillip.
one dinner does come to mind. We were I don't know, probably Ohio, because that's typically where we all ended up at some point or another at shows. And it was myself and Brian Still, Tom, George, and then Sid Rimley, who was Tuckaway Dalmatians,
Yeah.
And we're all sitting there for I don't know why, like none of the female companions of any of us were at this dinner. I really don't know. Maybe we just played golf. Probably we just got done playing golf.
Like it.
Went to have dinner. So we're sitting around, and
did George win?
Well, George, rest his soul. George, sometimes he couldn't count past 5. He had a hard time.
Or he rearranged the team so that
he had some. It's like everything else. There were rules and there were guidelines, and sometimes the guidelines were a little gray. But we were all at dinner, and some topics came up about relationships, and I don't know who said it, but it wasn't me. Well, fellas, if we had to, we could field a professional sports team, offense or defense, in the NFL with some of our past relationships. And I thought, oh my God, here I am.
No one's listening.
Exactly. Here I am, the young guy, I'm married and was divorced once, got some kids, but geez, oh Pete, am I going to be like that? But come to find out, maybe closer than I thought. But it's okay. And that you know what though, Will? That brings up, on a serious note, that brings up another area in the sport, or in even in life and relationship. Changing that path, like that you or I and all the people in our path, whether it was clients, dogs, judges, friends, partners, you change one piece of that and you don't end up in the same place you are.
Right.
We all have, or I shouldn't say we, I have things I wish I had done differently or at a different time. But when you take enough time, and we talked about retiring and taking a step back to look at the quality of the dogs you showed or the past, you also give yourself time to step back and look at your life, and every aspect of it has a good. Well, it's so easy to be negative, or that was horrible. That's not healthy, and it's not minimizing anything either. That's just your path, and that's why you are who you are, where you are today. And,
things come from your past that you never want to give up. Like let's face it. Like I have 2 boys, 2 sons. Right. I have 3 really, including Adam. I wouldn't have any of them if I hadn't been in dogs.
Right.
And they're the pride of my life.
Right. So, same with me. I mean, I have 3 grandsons from my boys. Heidi's daughter has 2 boys and just had a baby girl about a month ago. And, that stuff there is what's really, I don't want to be the important or anything, but that's the foundation of a lot of stuff,
Oh, yeah.
Like for me, I have a lot of issues, and I'm not super happy that when we're doing what we're doing and traveling, it was no different than my father and myself. When he was racing every weekend and gone, you miss a lot.
Right.
You miss a lot. And you have to realize what you're missing and try and prioritize that. And then that, I guess if I said I wish something was different, I wish I wouldn't have missed so much, but
right.
Everybody's good right now. Everybody's good.
Exactly. I grew up the same way. I was always not on my own, but there was times where I should have had more. But kids are resilient, and you grow
again.
up.
if you change the middle, the end isn't the same. Right. So were there things with my boys and my daughter and stuff that weren't the greatest? Sure. But today, I tell you, I can look at anybody right now and my relationship with my kids and grandkids, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Right.
It's all turned out, and they're great kids and a lot of fun, and I wouldn't have it.
I'm the same, boy. My boys grew up, and they're growing up to be the men I knew they would be.
Right. So back to dogs.
Yeah, that was too deep. Let's get out of that.
Yeah. Next thing I might see Jerry Springer over my shoulder. So yeah. Hit me with another one.
What's that?
Hit me with another one.
Exactly. Well, tell me about Aria. How did Aria come about? Aria was the Irish setter.
The Irish setter bitch. She was bred and owned by Shelley.
We butted heads a lot with Aria and my dogs. And it's always fun to watch your career. So.
Yeah, Aria. She was bred and owned by Shelley DeChambeau and her mother.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about the bitch. Never seen her before in my life. And I went to, and I don't know if I had Kevin still. Not really sure what dogs I had, but went to Ladies Kennel Club out east. And there was an Irish setter specialty, maybe on Friday before Saturday, Sunday shows or whatever it was. Anyway, I got there and setting up or whatever we were doing. And I walked over to Irish setters and I saw this bitch. I think she was 15 to 18 or 12 to 15. I thought, holy man, that's beautiful. And I went and watched her every day. And on Sunday afternoon, before Irish setters, I went to Shelley. I said, what are you doing with her? Oh, we're going to keep her. And my mom. I said, okay. And I said, would you consider selling her? And she said, no. This is our bitch we're going to keep. I said, okay. And it was kind of like the very first Gordon setter thing. I'm thinking, I'm going to buy that one. I'm going to figure out how to do it. But I also knew you ain't going to just take that one home and not show up anymore.
Right, yeah.
So I'll make a long story short. At the end of the weekend, we struck a deal, and I bought her. And the rest was just she ended up being come to find out after I bought her, she had won 2 or 3 sweepstakes. And I know Kenny put her up wall at a sweepstakes. Maybe it was at the National. I don't remember. But once I had her in my possession, and I found out that some people that I really respected in the breed had already done for her as a puppy and at a young age. And that made me feel good. And, the rest, I got her and we showed her and she won, I don't know, she won close to 20 best in shows. No, God, she won, I think maybe 30. I don't know. She was number 2 sporting dog one year behind Kelly Springer. And that's a good story. You remember, was it Science Diet or Quaker Oats? It was top 10 all breed dinner. I think it was
Science Diet was top 10. Right. Quaker Oats was just your groups.
Yeah. Right. Science Diet. So I'm all excited because I'm number 10. So I'm going to get to go to Science Diet, right? This is I don't remember what year it was. Anyway, I'll tell you what year it was. It was the first year they quit the dinner. So all year, my condolences are, okay, you're not going to be number 1 sporting dog. Kelly Springer is number 1. I think it was James maybe or some. I don't remember which Springer she had at the time.
Yeah, it was James. I remember the time.
But you're gonna be number 10 all breed. So you get an award and you're gonna get to go to a dinner. And I'm already planning, what we're gonna do. And sure enough, they didn't even have the dinner.
Oh, that would suck.
That was kind of a kick in the butt. But that bitch. I learned a lot with that bitch. Because a guy from Ohio, a Rottweiler veterinarian named Bob Wicks, co-owned her with me. Jeff was out of dogs at the time and not doing too much anymore. And I hadn't met Victor yet, and nobody else. I really was green to find someone to sponsor or promote or back, whatever the word you want to use, a dog. So I just did it. Bob and I did it ourselves. She had a limited amount of advertising, limited amount of travel, and she did really well.
She sure did.
But I learned a lot from that one. I learned a lot about about competition and showing at that level. And I always tell people as my career got along and we were showing dogs and people would ask more questions. Obviously, the longer you're around, the more questions they ask you. And they start winning, and you try and give them advice, or young people will ask you certain things. And, you want to say, remember how it was. And this isn't, I don't mean this cynically, but when you have a dog that wins a lot in your breed people get a little snarky or a little chippy, little edge. Then you go to the next level and you start winning groups and being competitive at the group level. Then you've got your breed people and all the other people in your groups that aren't really super thrilled, right? And then when you get to the best in show, ain't nobody there really thrilled with you. So it's just something. It's not a bad thing. It's just human nature,
Sure.
And you. But in order to be successful, you've got to learn that. You've got to learn and not take it personal. There's times when people, and even everyone, myself included, if the right person says the wrong thing, it's a kick in the gut, and it gets real personal. But you got to try and separate the personal from the business, and that's what Aria taught me a lot. Because there's her second year, her first year was good. I mean, she had 2 good years, but in the second year, it so happened that Jeff Arch came out with a Windy bitch, and he's in Pennsylvania. I mean, we competed in the breed every weekend, and
she was a lovely bitch too.
They were very different. They were very different in style. I mean, that's another thing. Style and type, I think, are totally 2 different things in my opinion. They all have Irish setter type. They're all no arguing they're Irish setters. Right. But I think within type, you can have styles of dogs.
And it becomes family oriented too.
Right. I mean, and everybody that knows me and Irish setters know that I'm not a big fan of super fancy, all kinds of angles, and I appreciate them. But if I get to pick something that's more my style, it's going to be a little less extreme. You know what I mean? And but the competition with Jeff and Wendy, that was fun. That brings one story to mind. That today, I don't know. There's so little communication between judges and exhibitors. And the communication that comes, if people don't pay attention or want to think poorly, it's always, they're pimping their dog, or they're talking about this win or the show next. That's a real bug of mine. It really is, because the more, as you know, the more success you have, the more success they have, the more naysayers sometimes there are. Okay. And just to throw a little plug in, I've started writing a little bit for Chronicle and wrote a safety article last month. And I've got some more articles in the hopper that I'm gonna do. And one of them is going to be titled, I haven't really figured exactly how I'm going to do, but preference or favoritism. And I think that's, that's really important in judging dogs and evaluating dogs. Just because I'm sitting here, back to the full circle, whoosh, shiny object, communication with talking to judges and stuff. I think that's a necessity. I think it's a necessity that exhibitors and judges need to have open lines of communication, because I don't know. There's all kinds of things I want to learn about other breeds, and I don't know. And why wouldn't you want to talk about it? But you have this perception of if you're talking to the judge, you're telling something bad about that dog, or you're trying to win here. And my point was that the more successful you are, the more people think that. Right. And I can't tell you.
There's a reason why you're so successful. It can't be because of talent or good dogs.
Or good dogs, right? Or honest judging. Right. It's I can tell you, and hand to God, 90% of conversations that I would have, whether it was during Kevin's career or Oakley's career or Orca's career or any of these other dogs, the giant schnauzers, any of these dogs, 9 times out of 10, when I'm talking to these people that I've known or you've known for 25 years, you're talking about golf. You're talking about your kids. You're talking about your family. You know what I mean? It's just the taking it to a place of negativity or favoritism or anything like that. I don't just.
No.
That doesn't mean things
It's
like that
human
don't
nature
happen.
to have people you like, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It means, like, if you walked in the ring with someone and you had the exact same quality of a dog, and I preferred you over that person, it's human nature.
You want to win the ties,
right?
That's kind of how I was taught from people like Tommy or George, or you can only hope to win the ties, and
that makes a lot of sense. It's hard for people to understand that. They think there's something going on. Well, it's not. Right. It's human nature.
Right. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're going to go onward now. I want to know Oakley,
wire pointer.
Yeah. How did Oakley come about? How did you and Oakley meet? How did you and Kelly meet? How did it all come together?
Well, my perception, my memory is not super great all the time. I can tell you how it ended. No, excuse me. But obviously, I'd had my experience with wire hair pointers, with tie dye, and had met Kelly and Claire, and obviously being around Ohio, Helen George, right, the rip snorter lady. Obviously, I saw her every weekend. Tommy had shown some dogs for Helen, and then had shown some dogs that she had bred to some successful wire hair pointers. So anyway, fast forward after tie dye and some other dogs. Frank had the Scout dog out.
Yep.
Okay, and they're litter mates. Scout and Oakley. I mean, a lot of people know, but some don't. We're litter mates, and they're both beautiful dogs. And Oakley was a much slower maturing dog, so Scout was ready to roll at a young age, and Frank took him and did great things with him. But Oakley wasn't quite ready, and I'd seen Oakley a couple of times. Kelly had shown him out east, and just watching, because I always had there's certain breeds you go watch whether you're in the mix or not, and I watched him, and then when I really saw him, Greg Strong had him for a weekend, and I'm not sure if it was many before that or after that, in Cleveland at the Crown Classic there in December, and I saw him, and I said to Kelly, I said, "Is that the dog?" She said, "Yeah," and chatted a little bit, and he was going to Brazil. While Frank was showing the Scout dog here in the U.S., Oakley was going to go to Brazil and be shown by Max, because Victor and Kelly, they were doing some Basenjis, or somehow they were a little bit connected. Okay. And then he went to Brazil for a year. So fast forward, the year's up in Brazil. This is 2010. And that was the year of that we were campaigning Dodger, and it was Top Dog Aubrey, the smooth. And so at the end of the year, there were some things going to go. Dog was going to go to Brazil, a smooth. That's how I met Victor, and we met Victor, and that particular dog fell through. Long story short, Dodger ends up going to Brazil. So that's what the connection with Victor ended up starting, was through Dodger, not even the wire hair pointer. So I knew that Oakley was down there and being shown by him with some of his handlers and stuff, but nothing else was really in the mix. So at the end of Oakley in Brazil, Claire, for that breed, it's like, I don't want to call it a specialty breed, but there's not very many people in the country that have shown wire hair pointers at that extent, at that number of shows, that have the experience. You know what I mean?
Oh, they're a special breed.
It'd be like me trying to go campaign a standard poodle. Hey, it ain't happening.
Special breed. Well, you have to understand them. You have to. Oh, they can be.
They're drastically different.
Right.
The majority of sporting dogs mentally, they're lovely, they're wonderful, but you have to understand them. Anyway, Claire called and said, "Hey, I'm bringing this dog back. This is the dog you saw in December in Chicago or in Cleveland." And I didn't have any dogs. I said, "Yeah, great." And he came, and he was a challenge. He was, but in order to do what he did, you have to have that temperament. I mean, he was wide open. Never had a bad day. Tough dog, not aggressive but tough, and very manageable. He was not, very very manageable temperament. And we started playing around a little bit with him, and he was doing pretty good. And I thought, this dog, and as you've done, I'm sure, and everybody else that does it, you kind of look and see what's happening in the next year. Who's got what's coming out, what's going on in your group or in your breed, and I told Claire, I said, at the end of 2011, going into, I said, he could be okay. We might have if you want to take a run at this. And she said, okay. So go to December in Orlando. Victor comes in. I think they were bringing Dodger back at the end of 2011, and he wanted to talk about Oakland, and so we sat down at the Peabody. The Peabody used to be where the Ducks walk through the hallway of the hotel there in Orlando.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there and had a couple of cocktails, and he said, "I'll never forget it." He said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I'm not big on predictions." I said, "I don't want to overstate what I think, but I think he's got it. I mean, I think he could do it." And I said, "What do you want?" And he said, "Well, I want to do something nobody else has done with the breed. I love the breed." And he had wire hair pointers in Brazil, and he had wire hair pointers with I think in Canada with Milton, and so he was big into the breed. He loved the breed. And he said, "Well, I want to do something that nobody's done with one." I said, "Okay." I'd never shown dogs for him before. Okay, we had done the smooth thing a little bit. He had co-bred some stuff with Amy, but I've never shown a dog for him at this point. And I said, "Okay." So he said, "Let me know what you want to do." So I started doing my thing, and the rest is just kind of history. But I have to. There's dogs before Oakley that and clients and situations that put me in a position to do that. I showed a giant schnauzer named Tempo for Robin Greenslade. That was a great experience and a great learning experience because I had never pursued a dog ever in my life. And this is a funny story. I never pursued a dog in my life. And I was on the Florida circuit when the Florida circuit still moved. And you moved from, Jekyll Island in Georgia was the first one. Then you moved to Lakeland and all that. Anyway, it was the Sarasota set, couple shows or one, where, all the Barnum and Bailey, the circus animals are next door. Remember all that? Anyway, and I love giant schnauzers. They caught my eye somewhere, and I've been watching giants. And there was this lady who ended up being Robin, had this beautiful bitch, and I had kind of put it all together because I like to do my homework, and I knew that it was the same lady that owned this giant 60 Minutes that Kimmy Pastella had shown. But Kimmy was showing boxers for the Truesdales then, so there wasn't a whole lot of probably room for giant schnauzers. And Robin showed her own dogs a lot. That's a whole nother story. But she was getting beat. This beautiful bitch getting beat, and so she was parked by me, where she had to walk past me. So one day I had to go, and she showed me opposite ribbon or something. I said, "Well, maybe next time." We introduced ourselves and name. And fast forward one day at one of the other shows on that circuit, I said, lady, she walked by and she showed me opposite ribbon. I said, lady, and I had never done anything of this in my life. People won't believe it, but it's true. I said, lady, when you get tired of losing with that one, you let me know. And she spun around and kind of laughed. If you know Robin, that was the perfect thing to say to her, because she's funny, she's quick-witted, she's passionate about her dogs, and very intelligent about the breed. And
that's funny.
Yeah, and I said, lady, when you get tired of losing, you let me know. And literally a couple of shows later, on my truck, and she said, were you serious? I said, yeah, sure. And she said, well, I'm going to talk to my husband, and maybe we'll send her out. She said, are you doing Raleigh? And I said, yeah. And I said, I got 2 shows between weekends between here in Florida and Raleigh up north. I said, okay. So she said, you'd want to take her home? I said, yeah, I'd take her home, and then we'll meet back in Raleigh and evaluate where we're at. It gives me like 3 weekends with her or something. And so we did that. I took her home. Tempo was her name. Lovely bitch. Fun bitch. Ended up being the mother of Dora, the one that the giant bitch that Amy showed that was number 2 working dog behind Matisse that year.
Yeah.
And great dog. Anyway, that was the mother of that bitch. So I take it home and go to some local shows. She wins the breeds, places a 3rd maybe or something, just figuring it out. Get to Raleigh, and Robin comes to watch. She wins the breed, and I go 3rd in the group the first day or something. And things are going well, I think. Well, Robin and Ken come, and Robin said, well, I'm going to take her for the night. I said, oh, okay. So I'm walking around Raleigh or something, and I look, and here she is over by somebody's, and there is a pile of hair on the floor underneath the table of this bitch. It's just like a garbage bag full. And she brings her back the next day, and I say, oh, a little hair off. She goes, yeah. Now she looks at not another ribbon, not another breed the rest of the weekend. And she started laughing. And in the end, she said, just take her home and show her. So that was how that started. And then she had, at that point, had never won a national specialty with a giant. And I had never won a national with any breed. And we got to Hershey, I think it's Hershey, Pennsylvania, that hotel where some nationals are or somewhere. Anyway, for giants. And we were in the mix all the way down to the end, and ended up winning the breed. That was the same time that Taffy had Spirit out. Mm-hmm. So that was quite the favorite, but we ended up winning the breed. So her first national and my first national win were the same one. I was on a giant schnauzer. So, but my point is that experience and lessons learned with clients and how to deal, along with back to the Marie Zink, the Dalmatians. She co-bred dogs with John Baichy, and I ended up showing Dalmatians for them. And those experiences and dealing with the people and the campaigns, all that led. And then obviously Dodger was a huge, huge learning experience about campaigning dogs and showing dogs. That's what led up to Oakley and Victor and I said, okay, well, here we go. So we took off that way. But I was very fortunate. I guess my point I'm trying to make is I was very fortunate to have the clients like we all do that get it and that are supportive and if you have a bad day, they're behind you, not micromanaging or, oh my God, you got, 3 best and you only won 3 of the 4 best in shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened?
The 4th one. Well, they didn't point at me.
What happened? But it was. I'm very, very grateful to all those people and clients. But Oakley was 1 in a million.
And then along comes Orca. And
right?
we all see Orca on the national stage. Then Phillip.
Yeah. Who knew that I was going to end up, showing the dog here in the U.S. and ends up winning Crufts? But that was quite an honor. And she's. There's one thing about when you and I think you would agree. There's one thing in common with all these dogs. They all just are a little bit different.
They what?
They're all just a little bit different.
Yeah.
They're all just, I don't mean from dog to dog, but even for their breed, they all have something that makes
them stand out.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even makes them who they are, I knew jack about legatos. I mean, they came to this country in 2015. They're a lovely breed. I was looking for one for Victor. He had a dog in Brazil, Bruno, that only had a 2-generation pedigree, right from Italy. So we couldn't, when they came recognized here, we couldn't register that dog here. It wasn't even, his pedigree wasn't enough, right? So he wanted a legato. So I mean, that's like trying to find a needle in a haystack it's literally 2015. They're not even literally recognized yet. It starts in January or whatever day it was, before the guard, January. And I'm trying to so I'm talking to people, and I end up seeing a dog in Australia and finding the breeder of that dog, the Ken Trace Kennel, and just calling. And, it's ironic because Sabina and I have been friends ever since. I brought a dog into this country. Orlando was the first one, a white dog. And he did well, but it was a little ahead of its time for the breed and for that, as we say, style of dog. It didn't really fit in. It wasn't time. But that relationship, I mean, that started something that even when I took a little year off from showing back in 2019, that we're friends and we've bred and we talk a lot. We have a great relationship, and I'm a part of that whole kennel situation now at Ken Trace, and I'm very proud of that. She's got some beautiful dogs, and when Orca was born, in the litter I said, "Who's that one right there?" She goes, "Well, that's a bitch that I'm probably gonna keep." I said, "That's a really beautiful bitch," and that's when that relationship with that bitch started, even before she'd ever stepped in the ring, and she had a lovely career in Europe before she even came here. Then, we had COVID. Yes. So,
didn't she win the group of Crufts before she came here?
She went second.
Second, okay. But we all noticed her. We all talked about her.
Right. Yeah, before she came here. And then, there was a up about her coming here and who was going to get her and where she was going. And, because she was a very quality animal, and people... Yeah. But nobody really knew the backstory about me and Sabina and that bitch, So it was, I was very grateful and fortunate to have had her, and she got here during COVID, and we talked to Victor, and everybody didn't know what was going to happen with COVID and everything else. So I actually got her here without an owner.
Yeah,
and because she needed to be finished and. All that stuff. So I figured, well, if shows open up and I get her finished, and Victor was interested, he was going to do it if we wanted to, and it all worked out. It worked out great. She had a wonderful career here, and then went on to do that there. But I don't know. It's very. I look at it now as retired as much as the dogs. I look at the people that were in my life, or I met through dogs, or the relationships. And I think a lot of the things that you learn stay with you, even past dogs.
Oh, no question, Phil. Yeah.
Even past dogs. But who would think that the sport of dogs would put people from all areas of life through, but
no, they've done
good story about back up just a little bit. Good story about Oak and Victor, one of my favorites, because this puts out a little bit about me. So we're in New York. Okay, Oakley was #1 dog all breed. He was doing great. We had won the group at the Garden. I mean, just beautiful. And we weren't sure what was going to happen with him before the Garden, even win, lose, or whatever in that year. But we went down to Florida. He won several best in shows, so he's up to like 80 best in shows at the time after the Garden. And we're having breakfast on Wednesday morning. And Victor said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, I think we can get our 100. I said, the Nationals in October. Let me pick and choose where to go between, and this is February, between February and October. And as you know, that's not uncommon for dogs to show through their national, a little bit, trying to get my 100. And he said, okay. He said, are you gonna keep approaching the campaign like you did last year? And I said, well, hadn't really thought about it. I didn't think so. I think I'd just pick shows that might look, decent for him without getting too crazy. We don't need to travel all over. And he says, well, he said, he said, I didn't mind the way we did it last year. He said, that was fine. I mean, and it was costly. And I couldn't really figure out what he was getting at, And I said, oh, you mean, and what I would do, I would give options every 3 months. I would put the proposal together. Okay, here's what I'd like to do with the dog, and this is what it's going to require. Here's a second option, and what it's going to, because he always wanted to know what was going on, and we always said, it's just fiscally responsible in a business. What are we getting into? What's going on? And then the third way would be, well, if it just stayed with the truck and I just went everywhere, here's what I thought would be realistic goals or expectations. Well, he never didn't do option A, ever, in the dog's career. And I thought, oh, that's great, but I never really thought it through, and I never knew this fact coming up. He said, well, he said, that's fine. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. He said, we'll do it to the national, hopefully get our 100, blah, blah. He said, but you need to know something. Okay, what? He said, you never, he said, how do you put it? He said, you never asked for anything special or any special go alone travel or do it, and not give me at least one best in show. And I tell you what, Will, I was sitting at breakfast at that hotel, whatever that thing is now. It was the Stewart down there in that little restaurant. And I got all freaked out. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God. If I'd have known that he was paying attention to results and schedules and travel that closely, I'd have been scared to death walking in the ring every time. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it was impressive. It was impressive that you care enough about, because there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't even, but he said, you never asked to do anything special and not give us at least one best in show that weekend. Okay. Good thing I didn't think about that, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that was great. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, we talk about stories and just talking with you brings up thoughts of each dog and some funny story or some, some of them not really appropriate, but they're just funny, and people don't know, like the judge thing, let's back up real quick to one of my favorite stories. And it's not disparaging about dogs. It's just human nature and people and well-respected people. I was at the Invitational weekend, was still in Long Beach. Irish setters. It was Arias last year, and Jeff was there with Wendy. First day, this is one of my favorite dog show stories of all time. First day, Mr. Reynolds did the breed in the group. Jeff won the breed. Jeff won the group. Okay, cool, great. Was I bummed? Sure. We all want to win. You don't enter to lose, right? Nobody enters to lose. So the next day, Mrs. Billings does the breed in the group. I win the breed. I win the group. So we're walking up, Mrs. Billings and I and the other sporting dog players are walking over to the picture podium. And Mr. Reynolds had done the previous group was at the photo stand. And, Michelle and Jim were very, very good friends, as we all know, and respected each other immensely, right? And we're walking back, and we're walking toward, and he's walking back. And how people, I don't know if a lot of people, how quick-witted both of them were. Very quick and very funny. And Mr. Reynolds says, oh, I see you put the other bitch up today. And Michelle said, yes, Mr. Reynolds, I did. And they're kind of slowly talking about, he said, well, that bitch is, what he said, such a lovely on the go. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I'm messing up. She said, that bitch, my bitch, such a beautiful, beautiful head. And it's true. That Wendy bitch had a gorgeous head. He said, that bitch yesterday had a beautiful head. And Michelle, not missing a beat, said, yes, Mr. Reynolds, she has a lovely head. but from the ears back, there's no competition. I mean, it's just them talking. You couldn't say that to the owners or the breeders, or people would freak out. Even to this day, Jeff and I laugh about shit like that. But it's just so funny that they were. But see, they were judging dogs with positive attributes and explaining why they did what they did.
Right.
Maybe it was with humor or something, but that's my point of what's missing, in dogs.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. There's just lots of stories. But
so
back to the latest.
What's that?
Back to the latest thing with Orca. That was fun. That bitch is a lot of fun, and the relationships and I have a bitch here now, 2 bitches, one I bred that's a lovely little puppy, and another one can trace dogs that we bred. That I'm going to show some of my own dogs. Heidi has her Labradors. We've shown a couple of those, and so I'm not completely gone from the ring.
Yeah, well, that'll be fine. You're thinking about judging, so
right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, you'll like it. I enjoy it immensely. So, yeah, I'm sure you'll love it. Yeah. I have a last question for you though, Philip. If you were to meet the 20-year-old Phil Booth, any advice you give him today?
Buy a cat. Great, seriously, that was pretty good timing. Yeah, I think I would give some advice that Tom gave me, and it sounds silly, and it sounds oversimplified, but if you do it, it's great advice. And he said to me, "Just shut up and show your dog."
Yeah, no, that's true.
You know what I mean? You don't mean that in a negative,
no,
vindictive way. It's just you how you look at the sport or how you perceive things can either allow you to enjoy it and move forward and be successful, or it can put you in a place of negative worry, frustration. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense at all?
Well, there's no question it does, Phil. I understand that completely. And it is kind of just let the process play out itself.
Yeah. And there was 2 things that him and Andrea told me that I to this day really listen and really remember. And that's one, Tom said, "Shut up and show your dog," because he did that. I was asking questions and stuff that was maybe relevant, but not really relevant. Just show your dog.
Overthinking.
Just trim your dog.
Yeah, trim your dog. As youngsters. So.
Right. Trim your dog better. Condition it better. Do your best. If you're doing your best, then show your dog. Just shut up and show your dog.
Yeah.
And then something that Andrea said, and you knew Andrea well enough to know, a little bit snarky, a little bit of opinion, but she said, and this sounds horrible, but it's not when I explain it. She said, "There's only 2 reasons you lose: better dog or better connection." And the first thing when you think about that, well, that's crooked.
Yeah.
Right? That's you're thinking about that's crooked way, the connection part. But see, it doesn't have to be. Okay, first of all, the better dog comment. You may put up a dog differently than I would put up because you think it's the better dog. Not be like we talked about being subjective. And neither one of us is wrong. In the judge's mind, it's genuinely the better dog.
Right.
You don't have to agree with them. And the connection part, that goes to something that'll probably be in my article about preference or favoritism, is the connection part could entail, okay, did you show your Irish setters, present them exactly the same way to every judge? No.
Oh, no. Yeah, you
there were
had to
certain
realize
judges that wanted them a certain way,
right,
that you knew would prioritize a certain aspect of the dog over another. That's kind of the connection part. If you,
it's knowing what you're doing, really.
Right, and who your audience is, who your judges, that can be defined as the connection part. But people want to so quickly think connection's crooked or a negative that it just it doesn't It doesn't play out. So yeah,
No.
the 20-year-old Phil Booth would hear from me, just shut up and show your dog. And I guess be grateful, be thankful that you're doing something, making a living that you enjoy doing. And don't take that for granted, because there's not a lot of people that have the opportunity to do that. And
it's very true. I used to wake up every morning and say, I get paid for doing this,
Right. And you wake up and you go to sleep every night explaining to somebody you're not famous at the mall, right? That's one of my favorite Will Alexander lines.
That's for another day.
Great. Well, I hope I think we've had a fun talk.
Yeah, that was great, Philip. I enjoyed it.
But this I could talk for hours, because there's 500 other stories.
We can do a part 2. Phil, part 2.
Right. And breeds and dogs and, but I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I'm looking forward to judging. I think that'll be enjoyable. Like you say, you enjoy it. I can't imagine I wouldn't. And I think we have a responsibility to try and do things for the sport. To say give back, that's a general term. But I think there's areas that maybe some people can try and not turn the tide, but try and direct the sport in a little different in a little better, more positive way.
I had this conversation with a handler one time, a very famous handler, very well. They've done amazing things. And we were talking about judging, and they were saying that they wish the judges were more educated in certain areas, And I said, the problem is it's our turn. It's our turn. Like, we've been through the trenches like the judges before us. It's our turn. It's our turn to step in the ring and do the best we can of what we've learned over the last 40 years.
Right. And it's not confrontational or judgmental to discuss dogs.
No.
Why does it have to be?
That's how we learn.
When I started, or when back, I can remember that the newer judges, when you'd watch groups or something, you'd have people sitting there, the Janies and Bobs and Michelles and Frank Sabellas and all the other ones that I'm forgetting, that were just icons and or experienced in certain areas, like Frank, for example, sitting there with somebody and say, well, who did poodles today?
Right.
And the person, I did, which is no disrespect, but it was somebody new, a newer person. But that person would just suck up like a sponge anything that Frank wanted to say about poodles. You know what I mean? And today, I just, maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's different. I don't see that. Right. I don't see.
Do you remember the days where we'd look at a premium list and say, oh, Mrs. Clark's judging in 4 months. Well, you upped your game for that day.
Right.
You aimed for that day.
Right. And I've got this young puppy I want her to see.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. But people don't do that. It's so easy. It's so easy to look at the negative side of all this stuff. And I mean, we all get caught up in it.
Sure.
We all get caught up in it. But it's, I truly believe that the communication between exhibitors, judges and judges, instead of being so defensive, so defensive.
Well, everybody's so easily offended nowadays, Philip. You can't say a word to them. So
right. That one last thing. Gare Pedersen, says a conversation way back over a certain topic that he got a lot of flack for. But anyway, he said, remember this. He said, here's how I approach my judging. And we're talking about discussing dogs and after a judge judges, et cetera. He said, if an exhibitor comes to me respectfully and open-minded and non-confrontational, I will talk about what I've done all day long.
Conversation, not a confrontation. I get it.
And he said, that's how it should be. He said, but from the other side, from the judge's side, he said, if that exhibitor goes to a judge with respect and calm and, in a not obedient, but in a respectful pleasant manner to just ask questions. The only reason the judge won't talk is if they don't have an answer.
Right.
And you think about that, right? Why would if you had an answer, breed specific answer or reason, why would you not discuss your decisions? You never stop learning. Why would you not try and explain to somebody why you put their dog second behind the other one? If they approach it in a proper manner. That communication, I think, is very valuable and missing a lot.
No question is. Growing up, both you and I know that that's just the way it was.
Right.
I remember going group 2 behind and under Mrs. Clark one time, and I asked her why, and what she told me was valid, and I took it.
Right. Right. I think that and I think that has to start happening again. And I think that there's certain aspects of judging and decision making that becomes comfortable, or just the answer du jour, And maybe I'll think differently when I start judging. I'm not, you never say never.
No,
but from my perspective on a lot of stuff, I just have to see how I prioritize.
Well, we're all human, and again, like you said earlier, it's all about the approach. If someone comes in a very aggressive manner, what are you going to do? We're human.
Right. No. Yeah. Right. I agree. I would definitely agree. So.
Anyway, that was great, Phil. I appreciated that time.
Thanks for having me. Anytime, and good luck with your judging and all the stuff you're doing.
I'm sure we're going to cross paths somewhere. You're not that far from me now.
I know, really, right across the lake. And I think I might be going to get a hold of you to move some dogs throughout the country or the world for me.
I'm there.
I saw your ad. I saw your ad. So your advertising dollars are working. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Hope it was good.
All right, man. Good to see you. Thanks, Phil. That was great. I knew it would be, because you always have great stories, and you have a story for everything. So it was great. Great interview. If you like what you're seeing here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button. You want to get a hold of me or find out what's happening in Will's world, go to Will Alexander's Dog Show Tips. And don't forget about the podcast every Thursday, The Dog Show Drive with Wayne Kavanaugh and myself. Talk to you soon.